Finally, the road to the Major 3 Pro-Am at DreamHack Atlanta has come to a conclusion with Elite 3 wrapping. We now have our final two teams who will be making their way to play against some of the best players in Call of Duty at DreamHack Atlanta. But don't worry, they're not the only teams having some fun, as we have some new challengers entering the foray, looking to make their mark in the Challengers Open at that same event. We're going to cover all of this and more this week in Challengers. It has been a wild week in Challengers. It feels like, Andy, we haven't had people be this excited for an Elite for a little bit, but we've kind of been talking about it for the last couple of weeks. It's because there's some extra stuff on the line. Coming into this last final day, yesterday, we're recording this on Friday, it was all came down to where you had the Huntsmen versus Project Notorious in that winners final side, and it was all about what is going to happen there, right? Because it was a couple scenarios that could have get shaken on out. If they lose, of course, that winners match side, they have to win losers finals. But even if they win the winners final side, which they're able to do, it's still up to Project Notorious to win the losers finals if they want to kind of secure their way into DreamHack. And they were able to, Project Notorious, able to clutch on up in a 3-1 against EMEA Brooklyn, sending the Huntsmen onto DreamHack Atlanta. You can see they were so excited on stream and everything. You might have lost the Elite in a 4-2 fashion, but we don't need to care about that because you did the hard part, which was get to DreamHack Atlanta.
Yeah, which is something that I don't think anyone would have had written down for this team, right? We'd had a couple of struggles with the second iteration of the roster. They changed it up this time round. You end up with Swooty coming in. There was a lot of question marks around that one. And then Renegade has been generational on a sub. The NPC meta has really let him loose again after how good he looked towards the end of basically stage one. So yeah, this is great for them. Anyone who's potentially still slightly confused because Notorious won in Birmingham, they were already qualified. So it was all about second places. Dan pointed out there. So, yeah, Huntsman already knew once Project Notorious had beaten off Brooklyn. It's a shame that they end up losing in the end, but I imagine that this is a moment for them where they go, all right, well, that's showing what we can do. We've beaten out, a couple of top teams to get here, including Project Notorious, who've been pretty undeniable for a while now. It's like, okay, we'll go to the Pro-Am. If we can somehow get ourselves out of groups, that'll be amazing because that's going to be pretty tough. But there's a lot of CDL teams I reckon they'll give a good run for their money.
Yeah, no, I think this is going to be, I think what's most fun about this Huntsman roster is that they look obviously very good, but it feels like you said, they actually feel like a roster that can match up maybe quite well against maybe some of those bottom teams that you might be able to just squeak your way out of groups in order to get to the bracket that's there. I could see some sort of miracle run happening, but it's also, you got to think about obviously the organization and the support staff and everything they have behind them. They're just surrounded by just so much veteranship that can kind of help those boys prepare for that type of stage. And then even look at the roster itself, like minus Swooty. Swooty's the only sort of question mark, I guess, when it comes to that, because you have Brack, who's been around forever. He's been in the CDL. He's played on main stage, right? He's going to be used to this. He's played against a lot of these players in the CDL. Same thing with Johnny, right? Johnny's been around forever. He's going to be able to be in that sort of situation. And Renegade, while maybe not in a Call of Duty sense, obviously we've talked so much about his historic runs in Halo. Like, okay, great. Like this isn't going to phase him. So I think the fact that you have that, you got Major Maniac as the coach in the back as well as Zinni, like it's just the group has so much, I think, going for them that I think maybe some of these other teams that have qualified in through the Pro-Am maybe don't have that's in their back pocket. I'm very excited to see how the Huntsmen square up against some of these rosters, dude. Because I think when we kind of later take a look at how some of the groups might shake on out, we could be looking at a group and saying, wait, they actually have a pretty decent shot.
No, I agree. So it's just a case of now them making sure they lean on the support staff that they have. VOD review, prep aplenty. I imagine they'll be going out and trying to boot camp pretty soon. But also, I wonder if you manage to just take a little bit of a tap on the shoulder of the Optic boys and go, look, wouldn't mind you just scrimming us a little bit and helping us take a couple of steps forward here before we really have to lock it in for this Pro-Am.
Yeah, and even just looking at the Elite 3 bracket, right, definitely felt like a little bit more of a tough sort of road to be able to get there for the Huntsmen, right? Obviously, you have that Cabal roster there in round number one. It's a 3-1. You go up against the 4Fun team, 3-2, okay? 3-2 against Project Notorious. For Project Notorious, it builds me, I'm not taking anything away from that team because they are absolutely gross. They are very disgusting. But it's like 3-0 Torn, 3-0 Stallions. You lose game 5 against the Huntsmen, and then it's just a 3-1 against EMEA Brooklyn. And the thing is like, okay, well, when it matters most, you still showed up. You were still shooting. You were still frying in a 4-2 in grand finals, right? So it's kind of like, it's good signs of life for both teams is kind of what I'm just trying to say there, to be able to see that. I'm hoping for Project Notorious, they're going to get in some good reps. They're going to get in some good scrims, because I think if you're relying on maybe what you experienced through the elite, it's, I feel like, not as good an experience as maybe the Huntsmen just got, with obviously some roster changes, having to battle through some of those series and stuff. That gives them a little bit more, I think, of the firepower when we think about this GSL format that they might have to fall back on. But North America was not the only region we had to pay attention to, because it was also the winner of the EMEA Elite Season 3 that also claimed the final spot. And for EMEA, it was none other than Omit Noir. This is a super fun roster to talk about. Anyway, because I feel like, this kind of came together. This is a team that came together last minute. We got DK and Ethan, who's here, kind of trying to prove themselves, able to come on in. It felt like a very Cinderella story for them to be able to do it. I mean, just look at the run that they had to go through to get there, right? They beat Treaty 1 in a 3-0. They beat Rock in a 3-1 and P7 in a 3-0 as well. And it looks like it's almost, all gas, no brakes until that grand finals where they go up 3-0 against Rock and then get, unfortunately, reverse swept. Which, by the way, we gotta also talk about Rock. So Rock drops down. Basically, any other team besides Rock could have had a shot at making it to the Pro-Am here. Yeah. And Rock just said, no, nobody else gets to do this, and just makes this insane losers run going through exceptional NAJD and P7 just to get back to grand finals. So if you are Omit Noir, though, you were basically like crossing your fingers that Rock was going to make this run, because it was similar to the Huntsmen, where as long as Rock made it back to grand finals, Omit Noir was safe.
Yeah, so to clarify a whole bunch of things, Rock, of course, win in Dallas, so therefore they've already got their spot. So if they get through to finals, whoever second ends up being Omit Noir. Omit Noir, yes, get reverse swept. And now Bance, who is their coach, has tweeted out that he has the wonderful honor of being, I think, the first person to ever be reverse swept in a best of 5, best of 7, and best of 9. So well done to that man. And then it's a case of course, talking about Rock and the fact that they looked crap in this split so far. They did not look good in groups. They come out, they end up then getting dumped into the lower bracket pretty early. And then, make the run of dreams, because they win game 5, game 4, game 4, game 7. So they've made an incredible run. Looks like they're back to their form just in time for the Pro-Am, which would be lovely, especially with how good they've been this year. I think they've got the most pro points out of like every team in the world. So they do. So it's a case of like, it would be a massive shame to then see them and everything that they've done this year kind of dissipate just as we get to the biggest event of the year. Obviously, Challenger Champs later on in the year and EWC and all that. But right now, this is by far the biggest event for these players. You then also have the Omit Noir story, which is, man, there's no keeping DK down. Like, this kid is disgusting. Like, his statistics through the entire elite are like a 1.3 KD or something. This kid has come out of nowhere and is absolutely tearing up everything put in front of him. So very excited to see him. But then, Ethan alongside him as well. Another new face to the space. Another young guns come out, done incredibly well. Alongside Denzer and Aspect, these are a good place to be playing alongside. Of course, Denzer, a veteran of the space. Aspect's been around a little bit, not forever, but I mean, I don't know. You as soon as this team was put together by the Omit banner, we were like, okay, that's an interesting project. It's not a project; it's an outright success.
Yeah. I know Rafi was on the timeline after saying, hey, I know we're not necessarily nearly as loud as we used to be, but I still know how to put a roster together. And I mean, you got to give props where prop is due, right? I mean, obviously seeing that's kind of what Rafi's been able to do, no matter what the region is take young budding talent, marry them up with some vets that are there, create a system that then allows them to flourish. And to be able to see, hey, at least you're Omit Brooklyn. They were trying to make the run on the North America side. They fall short in losers finals, but it doesn't matter. You're still going to have some of that Omit representation from the EMEA side in Omit Noir that's there. So I love that on both sides of the coin, right? Through both regions in North America and EMEA. It feels like we have our mainstay teams, which we know are good. They've been good all year. Great. Cool. And now it feels like we have two almost like wild card teams that are kind of joining them as well in the Huntsmen and Omit Noir, who were like, they could either go on some insane run or they could just get choke slammed. It feels like those are the two
Yeah,
And the two angles, I could see both of those teams going. Like, would not be surprised to see either the Huntsmen or Omit Noir come out and start taking maps and series off of some of the CDL teams. But also, because of the way the GSL style format works, I could also see them maybe just kind of having two really rough series and all of a sudden they're out. Thankfully, we'll talk about it more in a little bit. Thankfully, I want to just clarify here, if any of these teams do lose into that upper, kind of CDL Pro-Am style, they can still play through the challenger side as well. So a little bit almost like a 2-life scenario that's there. We'll cover all of that more in a little bit, but just as you're kind of listening to us talk about this, just keep that in the back of your brain that it's not just all about how do they do against the CDL teams. Now, a couple episodes ago, we explained exactly how the GSL format works, but now that we're a lot closer, we can actually start filtering in some names and maybe doing a little bit of predictions on how the groups works. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, this is as of today. There's still some CDL matches to play, which could shake things up. You could see some people move around groups, but this is just a hypothetical situation for us to be able to look at to see where do some of the challengers teams slot into the groups. And for the most part, things aren't going to change that much from this. So Andy, let's go do a little bit of an explainer, reminder, refresher to people how GSL is going to go ahead and work on out, but then we can kind of work our way through the groups and a couple of the matchups, specifically with the challengers teams, and how we can maybe do a little bit of predictions, right? Of maybe how this will break on down the path for some of these challenger teams, and is it realistic for them to make it to that double elimination bracket?
Yeah, so the way it works is essentially you got to win 2 before you lose 2. Now I'm going to have to move this onto the big screen so I can see exactly what I'm looking at here. But so the way it works, first game, LA Thieves against Omit Noir. Now, I'm going to assume that everyone in Group A there is going to go with LA Thieves. You don't? I'm interested in your storylines. I'm interested in what you're thinking about. Minnesota, Carolina Royal Ravens. My friend, I'm assuming Minnesota?
I'm assuming Minnesota. They've been looking very good.
We'll pop Minnesota in there. So the way it works then is both LA Thieves and Minnesota basically go through to the next round of the bracket inside their group. So they would drop to the next winners section. So winner versus winner is where they would now play. Omit Noir and Royal Ravens would go to the loser v loser match. That's how that works. It's kind of like you're basically moving along a double elimination bracket inside your group. So then Thieves play Minnesota. I'm going to go with Thieves. So then because Thieves have won 2, they're now guaranteed through the groups. They go straight to playoff brackets. Whereas Minnesota would drop into a lower bracket waiting for the winner of Omit Noir and Carolina Royal Ravens. So Omit Noir, Carolina Royal Ravens. I actually don't know. I'm going to go with
that feels close, man.
Yeah, that feels good. That feels like a good game. I think that you're going to see DK and Ethan and co make their mark in that one.
Yeah.
But let's say that is Royal Ravens. Then they would go through to play against G2. Noir are out. And then Minnesota and Ravens would play against each other once again. Whoever wins that one is through because they've won 2 games. Yep. Whereas Royal Ravens are out. They've only won 1, lost 2. That's how this works.
Yes. So you get a good, nice little idea there of how it kind of breaks on down. That's why this GSL format is super, super nice, because it kind of gives you a little mini bracket inside of in order to get to a larger bracket. So you really have an opportunity where it feels like the best team can win. That is there, but still also just allows for not necessarily something like group play, where now you can actually have a little bit of finesse and maybe you end up with a match that feels a lot more fair. So we already went through Group A, but we'll work our way through some of these matchups, at least the first round matchups for these other groups, right? So for Group B, we have a spicy one, man. Optic Texas versus the Huntsmen. Okay, I don't know. Do you
just very quickly? Before people absolutely shit bricks on the timeline, again, this is current seedings.
Hypothetical.
Yeah, this is all hypothetical. We tried our best to kind of marry this to the current seedings and how they would play out, likely to change with the ongoing games. Literally, Texas and Paris Mates are playing right now.
Okay, well, that'll make or break some of this stuff. But listen, for the sake of the storyline and the content and in a banger process episode, please let Optic Texas and Huntsmen play against each other in the first game of Group B. That's all I want to see. And then we have Surge and Heretics. I don't know, man. That feels like I've been kind of liking the Heretics a little bit more lately.
Yeah, definitely.
I think they're doing good. So I would love to be able to see that. I do think, obviously, Optic Texas, I think, unfortunately, will win against the Huntsmen. I think they scrim them a lot. You're going to know them, and you're going to see them. So, but if we kind of then hypothesize, whatever that word is, Huntsmen versus Vancouver Surge, that one does feel maybe a little bit more even keeled, then I think that could at least be a really good match. I don't think it necessarily is a 3-0.
No, I agree. I think that's going to go right down to the wire. Do I see Surge maybe having like a deeper S&D and that gets them over the line? Sure, but I can see that one being like a game 5. But so I'm with you there. I'm with you. I think we'd have to lean Surge on that one just for sense, but I'd love it to be Huntsmen. I'd love it to be Huntsmen.
So would I. Moving on to Group C, I feel like when I kind of look at Group C and Group D, these are the two groups that I think most likely could have a challengers team make it out of them and into the bracket. Because I'm looking at this, you're Rock Esports, you're going up against the Gentlemates. I think Rock is doing really good. The mates are a little gross. I know you might have some thoughts of maybe some areas that they could do better, but I'm thinking overall, it's still hard to bet against them. But I'm kind of thinking here, man, if I gotta put Rock to maybe beat the Riyadh Falcons or Cloud9 New York, I don't think it's I don't think that's faded to think that Rock can hold their own easily against either of those teams, just given what we've seen, at least in the last couple of matches that have been going on.
No, I think Rock outright mollywop Cloud9. I'll be completely honest with you. Don't get me wrong, Nezra's insane. Nezra's actually really good. They're not, and across the board, they're okay, but like it's a case of this Rock roster would have beaten that Cloud9 roster in Challengers. So I definitely think they're beating them in the Pro-Am. So I have Rock winning against them. The Falcons matchup, the one thing that we know about this Rock team, they're pretty they're just like endlessly aggressive and pacey. The NPC meta, it's taken them a minute to adapt, but they have become very good with it. So I don't know, man. Like Falcons, they're a bit hit, bit miss. Like if they feel the pressures against them, because people will be cheering the underdog on here. 100%. We are going to think like, oh yeah, we're going to get some love. No. The second you come up against that Pro-Am team, that amateur team, if they start to run you in a map, they're going to bank for them. And like, for me, I don't know, maybe we had crumble under that pressure.
I could see that, maybe a little bit of a map set. Like it's kind of one of those, you get the right map set that goes your way. You get off to like a nice hot hard point to kind of let you steamroll some momentum through the rest of the series. I could see it, man. I mean, it's there. In Group D, this is obviously what the whole point of this format is, to try and, kind of put skill together. So Group D, this is going to be arguably the closest in skill group that we have. So we kick it off with FaZe Vegas versus Project Notorious. I'm going to say that leans obviously into the FaZe side, but I don't think it's necessarily a huge, 90%. I'm thinking it's kind of feels more like a 65-35.
I think of all the teams, I think Notorious are going to be really unlucky here because the way it works, the way the seeding works is essentially seed 1 is rewarded in Group A by having the quote unquote easiest group. So they basically get like the worst mid teams and then basically like Omit Noir because they're the bottom challengers team. And it's like the way it should work in Group D is like this is incredibly close. Unfortunately, obviously, this is likely to change. In our hypothetical situation here, Notorious end up with Koi and FaZe, which is really unlucky because I actually think Notorious would go very well against Surge, Falcons. I think they beat Cloud9. I think they go well against Royal Ravens, maybe even G2. So if they get any of those, I can see them making it out of the group.
Yeah, but they got to make it out of the group, right? That's the problem. And so they got to have that. I mean, but here's the thing. Against that FaZe, we've seen that Vegas roster kind of falter a little bit recently. So maybe we see them falter a little bit against a team of players that aren't used to playing against. A reminder, folks, Project Notorious has a lot of players who recently played against the FaZe Vegas roster. So it's really not they're not it's not like a newfound thing for them, right? So you're like, all right, cool. We got some CDL pros on this roster. You've played against FaZe earlier this year. It's not like some spooky, right? It's not the boogeyman. Like they can bleed, it's fine. But I think the key thing there is what you mentioned, is that you unfortunately also have Koi in that group. And Koi, I think are well, you might have, some people might have their doubts, you might have any things to think. I think just Koi probably still is able to hold the line that's there. It feels like even if we watch some of those earlier games get dropped on out, I think they're still going to be A-okay. And unfortunately for the Boston Breach,
yeah, dude, brother, I know that you don't want to say it, but your team sucks right now. Like, they are bad.
Listen, I said, I'm okay if we just get the Project Notorious roster. Just get Snoopy back on in and just let him.
I don't know, man. That didn't really work for you for 3 years, so.
Well, listen,
anywho,
just try something.
Just try something. So I get Chris P in my DMs telling me that I'm an asshole. The way this would work is, that guy used to be my boss. He would have every right to do that. But the way this works would then obviously those teams get moved through to a traditional double elimination bracket. So Yeah, this I love this format, and in my personal opinion, I want this to be the format every major. I want every single time the elite to have those pro-am spots, and I don't really care how we figure it out. Do we put 2 in EU and 2 in NA or whatever? I don't really care how we figure that out. Obviously, I would like the opens to somehow play in, but then it would be a case of you can't put an open winner into the first major because you would have to already find out the open winner first. So it wouldn't really work that way. But in my opinion, this format is the best format for linking challenges and CDL, period.
But obviously, the Pro-Am is not the only thing happening at DreamHack Atlanta, okay? We also still have a Challengers Open that is going to be ripping on through, right? So, as we mentioned earlier, for a lot of those teams that were playing through, obviously, the bracket side, through the Pro-Am side, if they get knocked out, they then actually drop down into the Challengers Open. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, that they drop into the top 16, I'm pretty sure, immediately.
Yeah, I'm very curious about how this is going to work. I've never seen this before because usually that period top 16 will be settled. You would have 16 teams through, so I don't really get how they're going to do it. But I mean, I feel like there is a historical example somewhere, but like I don't know. I guess maybe what you do is you let a round play and send some players into the lower bracket and then fill the upper bracket with the teams falling down. I don't know. I haven't really seen it before.
Well, the point of that is that there's a lot of other teams still trying to play through that open bracket side, right? So through that Elite Season 3, we saw a team, the Telluride Bush, not make it through. They didn't make it out of their groups and into the bracket. And so because of that, they had to maybe go back to the drawing board a little bit. They were approached with an opportunity and they decided to seize it. So the Telluride Bush squad, the Barstool Sports org, has now brought on a secondary squad that will be participating at DreamHack Atlanta, and that is none other than the Shrub, as they are so appropriately called, comprised of none other than Skill, Arsenes, Asim, and Wevy. Now, obviously, Enemy, you and I had the honor just yesterday to do a nice little showcase match between the Bush and the Shrub. It was a 7-0 on the side of the Telluride Bush. I don't think anybody's super surprised about that, but I want to talk about the Shrub, what we saw yesterday, and how we think that might, kind of tee them up for potentially a deep bracket run at Atlanta.
Yeah, unfortunately, Asim was getting absolutely battered, and Arsenes wasn't having his best series either. But I think that both of those players, when I think of the way they play, they're not high-paced players, and I don't imagine NPC meta plays very nicely into them. And as well, I'm looking for them to lead this line, and they probably recognize that they're under pressure. Skill and Webby, they'll look great. Like, don't get me wrong, they weren't exactly like blowing out double positive or anything like that. But despite the fact that the team were getting manhandled, like the scores yesterday, 250 to 118, 6-0, 6-1 in the overload, 250 to 160, 6-2. I stopped writing after this point because it was like, whatever, these guys are just losing. But it's a case of both Skill and Webby were consistently even or positive through that series. And when there was a star moment, a breakthrough, it seemed to come through both of them. So I'm very excited to see what they can do. Obviously, it's weird for both of them because they get thrown in and like usually you kind of get time to adjust to stepping up to the adult level and everything else. The cameras are going to be on you. There's going to be a whole crowd stood behind you under a lot of pressure, but I'd love to see them make a run deep in this bracket.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I did like what I saw yesterday. And Asim even said it afterwards where he was like, they haven't played S&D really at all, like as a team. So you're like, this is good. It's almost like, hey, they wanted to be thrown into the fire, right? Because they're like, this is the easiest way. We're playing against a good team for us to like have a level set where we can now go back and when we VOD review, we're not just guessing, right? We can be like, okay, we had a level. Let's go ahead. These are very obvious mistakes we made. We can just go ahead, cut that out now, and that way we can kind of turn our eyes to continuing to do some stuff more. But it was exactly what you said, where there were some highlight moments where, specifically Wevy and Skill were really coming online, were really kind of having some great 2 or 3 piece moments in sort of some of the respawns and the hard point and the overload. That it bodes well to me that I think that given that they go into the open, and I think the best thing that the Shrub has going for them is that this is a team with enough skill to probably not have to be too worried about the first couple rounds, right, of that bracket. But what it will do is it gives them now the runway to get that experience underneath them belt, have a little bit of momentum. That way, when you finally hit those rounds where there are actual really, kind of solid, tough teams that you're going to have to go against, you now have just more underneath your belt. You have that experience. You have that practice that's there. I think it's going to be great.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Like without, unfortunately, it's winning or learning, right? You have to be able to apply that mental attitude to things, especially when you're so young and so raw in your development. Like this is the best time. You're going to soak up this information like a sponge, the new timings, just how brutal things are. Any mistakes you make are going to get punished. These are things that you have to be able to like soak up right now and apply to your future careers. Because if these two do it right, we're going to be talking about them in the CDL. This is going to, you know, if they're coming in, riding that hype a little bit, and then they kind of like, all right, I know how good I am. I'm going to, you know, just whatever, play my game. We'll be talking about your challengers place for the next few years, fellas, until you decide whether or not you want to retire. So it's up to you, really. You kind of, but with that in mind, what you had there was a great opportunity to learn from a very good team, and hopefully they go about that. And I'm looking forward to seeing what both of these boys can do. I know that there'll be a lot of attention on them, not just this year, but also, of course, when we go to MW4 and everything beyond.
So obviously a lot to look forward to next week, of course, at DreamHack Atlanta, not only from the Pro-Am side, but also through the Challengers Open side. I know there's going to be a lot of teams who think that they have what it takes in order to make some of those deep runs on land. Land Call of Duty, it always hits a little bit different. So if you're here, if you're watching, let us know, who do you think makes it out of the group stage and into the bracket for the Pro-Am side? What team should we be watching out for when it comes to the Challengers Open side? Who do you think's be making a deep run there? Andy, obviously a lot going on in Call of Duty next week. How are you feeling about it? What gets you amped?
A couple of announcements that we got to make. That's what gets me amped, brother. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing everyone in person in Atlanta. It's going to be a hell of a time. It's stepping up to be an absolute banger. You've got everything going on. Obviously, the Warzone stuff as well. Don't worry, multiplayer fans. We'll keep that light here. But it's a case of, you know, Halo's there. There's so many wonderful things going on in Atlanta. It's going to be thousands upon thousands of people turning up, all to have a fantastic time. And for those of you who were a little bit disappointed, it was an outdated post on the timeline. Beer will be served inside the venue. So going to be a great time. I'm sure. I can't wait to see everyone there.
Well, hey, I love that. So none other better way to end the episode than letting everybody know there will be beer at DreamHack Atlanta. That's all we got for you this week. So let us know in the comments all of those things like I just said. Who are you rooting for? What team do you expect to make some waves? And how do you feel about the Telluride Shrub? Let us know. With that being said, that's all we got for you this week in Challengers.